wisdom of fear. And anxiety. You are the last leaf rattling on a tree, held to a branch by a single thread. Each time the wind blows, you are filled with the dread that debilitates you. You want to hold on to the branch, yet know that the time is coming that you will fall. You know you will be asked to transform into something new, that the winds will carry you where they will, and you will need to accept. Life is changing and challenging you, and you are the last rattling leaf on a tree. Fear and anxiety create such a feeling of entirely groundless, so hard that can be hard to breathe, even hard to think, even to think a single thought without being overwhelmed with feelings of fear. I know fear and anxiety well. I have come to learn that it is always asking for a new me to be born. The self that you are now will not carry you through to the other side of that fear and anxiety. You must grow. And this growth requires a peeling back of all the walls that are holding you and stopping you from moving forward in your life. Each time fear or anxiety visit, I create space for it to move. For I have come to learn that this is where my growth begins, staring directly in the eyes of what is ultimately my distrust in life. It's important to acknowledge that you are the threshold being pushed to the very border of yourself. And you have to find a way to really accept and summon your spirit and arrive available enough to move through this place. And taking that one step forward means you are embarking into unknown territory of yourself. So comfort is not really an option in this place. Yet with practice, you will learn to be okay with this discomfort. This is where we, like Michelangelo, we are casting free the angel from the stone. These dense and dark places are best used wisely, for they are teaching us of our untapped powers and wisdom. There is truly something holy in the visitation of fear and anxiety. It is showing us how to shed our skins and the beliefs that are holding us hostage, the beliefs that are keeping us small. I would not be the person that I am today. The daughter, the coach, the sister, the friend, had it not been for the great walls of the fear of anxiety that held me back. Yet they pointed me in a new direction and led me to the doorway of a more divine and trusting self. So whenever fear or anxiety come, challenge yourself to be proactive in your experience of this place. Do not let these thoughts trample you. Just be with them. And I don't say this flippantly, for I know how tremendous anxiety can feel, so long as you are showing up regardless and nurture what you want to be true for you. You are slowly carving a path through the pathless wood. I remember when I was in a state of long anxiety, it overwhelmed my waking moments and made it hard for me to move through every waking moment, each moment of life. And no matter what, I put my shoes on. I walked through the fields with my journal in my hand, and daily I allowed myself to lie on my back and go directly into the eye of the discomfort. I journaled. I spoke to the skies. I danced. I wouldn't tell anyone that, though I danced. And this went on for months. I was rubbed entirely raw by this life. And slowly, something began to kindle within me. A depth I had never touched became accessible. A rooting down within myself. It was as if enduring and nurturing myself within this place. Debilitating anxiety. I was growing extra roots that reached down through the darkness, through the grit and the sand, and found its source of water. These are not easy places to go, and I do not share this lightly. And it takes time, and it takes grace with ourselves to say, I can do this, no matter how long it takes, no matter how long the journey. I'm in this for me. I'm in this for the long haul. It wasn't as if I was cured immediately from the anxiety. It slowly lessened and slowly lessened. It got softer and softer. And before I knew it, the visitor called anxiety left. The visitor was gone, and I was no longer the same. So now when fear and anxiety visit, I have developed a strong spine around it. I have endured it before, and there's a type of courage that is born from showing up in those places. From showing up and acknowledging that anxiety is here, and no matter what, it's okay, and I will make it through it with much more grace than I used to. And it will move through much quicker than it used to. And you will grow into another version of yourself by doing this work. Our suffering remains static unless we create the conditions for it to change. So I'd like to do a little practice with you now to show you how to use these places for good, for your good. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that fear and anxiety are a couple of the emotions that are the most difficult to deal with, to release, to find grace for, to let go of, all those things. It takes work and commitment. So if this tends to be a sensitive issue for you, I encourage you to get whatever support you need from this group. Allow yourself to be vulnerable, for it is through your vulnerability you will find the strength to make it through the fears and anxieties that you have held within as you do this work in these 14 days. My wish for you is that you feel safe enough to do this work and proceed. And I'd love to guide you now. So take a seat and close your eyes. And when my eyes are closed, I search the room for comfort. I source it out and find my comfort spots. And I do this by just kind of keeping my eyes closed and using my other senses, such as sound, and to feel what is beyond me. And I feel as if something is reaching out back to me that is generous, something that is warm, perhaps a presence. There is something there with you. See if you can tap into this presence as well with your body and your mind and with all of your senses. Really let it hold you. Really let yourself trust this. And connect with your breath. The tide, the great tide of your breath, breathing in with the deep sense of your belly and exhaling through the mouth with a great exhale, as if it's saving your life with every inhale and every exhale. And use that breath with your full intention. Pay attention to it. And even though there is great fear or panic inside of you, I'd like you to do your best to maybe find a sliver of understanding and acceptance for this moment, for this visitor here with you. Again, this is called grace. Grace for these emotions. And I want you to do your best to breathe this sliver into something even bigger. Breathe big. A yes to yourself, a yes to this moment, a yes to this reckoning. A yes to you as you are in this moment. Fires and all. If there is any drops of it, acceptance that you can muster, use them to help warm the space around you. This can help the waters inside of you to flow again, to flow freely, to be gentle with yourself. Find even just a whisper, a yes to yourself. Pain in this moment has become more intimate in this moment than anything else. You are most likely feeling very isolated and alone. Yet know that this place that you are in, my friend, is calm and is available to each human. That the sages and the poets and the wise ones have all stood in this very same place of anxiety and fear and made it to the other side. With the same fire in their belly. This type of suffering comes for each of us. We are not immune. It is best that we learn to say yes to it, or resistance creates a hindrance. Resistance creates a wall between us and our healing. And resistance actually locks us in a very, very small room with this visitor. It's time to release yourself from the room as we go through this. So once you have found a bit of acceptance in you, even just a whisper, even just a sliver of grace for yourself in the kindness of this care of fear and anxiety, the divine comes alive in us. If we enter into the kindness of our own soul, it changes the tone and quality of our own life, of our experience. I want you to notice your breath again, breathing in. Be aware of your in-breath, and breathing out. Be aware of your out-breath. Exhale. And as you're breathing in and breathing out, see if you can find a little bit more grace for yourself when it comes to fear and anxiety. They have no hold on you. It's important when we dive into the center of these storms that we anchor back into our breath when we remember. And sometimes we will forget. However, when we anchor into the breath, it will become our life raft. So let it be your life raft. Let the breath be your life raft through grace. In the words of an author, Perhaps in our times of confusion and forsakenness, the soul is asserting itself, endeavoring to draw us aside in order to speak to our heart. Let me say that one more time. Perhaps in our times of confusion and forsakenness, the soul is asserting itself, endeavoring to draw us aside in order to speak to our heart. When we learn to see our fear and our panic and our anxiety as visitors that are here to instruct us and asserting us, to come and speak to our heart, we create an inner hospitality that is no longer a stranger in our home, that is trying to hurt us. Thus enters grace. For fear and anxiety don't want to hurt us unless we let them. It is time for us to allow ourselves the grace to overcome the fear and anxiety that enters. There's a fierce kindness and a fierce grace being burned into us. Recognize that. Breathe that in. This is how we learn to be. Be with all. Be with ourselves. And in being, we are also becoming a different version of ourselves. We are refusing to stay captive of our minds. And we are disarming the ramblings of fear and anxiety. They will still speak. However, in this way, we have begun to create space around it, to separate ourselves from it. When we're really stepping into the mother of this part of ourselves, nurturing the wounds in us, the old scars of fear and anxiety. Start to diminish. We are watching the objects of our disharmony, yet no longer inviting it to take hold of us. When lost in this way, I use journaling, or I speak to the sky, or I speak to Badger. And it helps to release the energy that is burning up inside of me. It's time for you to find what that is for you. To find the doorway out. It's gratifying because it helps us find flow and momentum, and helps us to find acceptance and surrendering. So I ask you to surrender to it. For by surrendering, it no longer has the power that it has had on us. When we do this, we are admitting that it no longer has a hold, and there is freedom in the act of letting go and finding grace. The freedom helps us release this old pattern. Give yourself that gift. So let's connect with our breath again. Inhale. Stomach rise, chest rise, and exhale. Do that again. Feel the belly rise. And I want you to source again the grace that is within the room around you as you breathe. And notice that something is really reaching back to you, and you are not alone. And something is truly holding you, something gentle. There is a presence all around you, encompassing you. And this is a gentle hold. This is not the fear and anxiety. I want you to speak to this grace that is holding you. And I want you to tell this grace that is holding you what is inside of you. Tell it what you are most afraid of. Expel from you what is haunting you. Tell this grace how you sincerely want to change, that you no longer want to hold this peace inside of you. Tell it. Tell this grace. Express that you are ready to move into the light. Ask that it help you. Ask that it guide you. Ask grace to guide you. Ask that it absolves you and transforms you, and it makes you soft. And if possible, I would like you to do your best to find softness in your body. You can lay down on your back if you'd like. Open with your arms and legs wide. And lay open as if being warmed by the sun, the very sun within you. And if the fear and anxiety is still with you, which it might be, find acceptance and peace. Find your willingness to endure this experience as long as it needs. One day it will change, for everything is impermanent. No thing remains the same forever. So one step, one breath is all you need. Today it is here, and I am okay. A wise person once said that we hold fear in one hand and we hold love in the other. and we walk forward, saying with great intention and without trepidation that I choose love, that no matter what, I choose love. And I choose grace for myself. So moving forward, we take our fear and anxiety in one hand and our love in the other, and we continue to walk, choosing love with each breath, grace for ourselves with each breath, regardless of the fear in our other hand. I choose love. I choose grace for myself. I choose grace. I choose grace for myself. And when it feels right, just open your eyes. And what you have just shown is incredible bravery. Most people run their whole lives from themselves. And I am a testament of someone who ran for a long time from fear and anxiety. This practice that I just shared is how I have learned to be with myself in all the faces of me. It has become less frightening. And when fear arrives, I now know that I'm being fortified. I do my best to not resist. I use it as an invitation to always let go of my small self and reach farther into the realms of my freedom. To have grace for myself. And the most peculiar thing about this story that I shared about when my anxiety was with me for months on end was when it left. I was almost sad. And the reason there was a sadness was because I realized how close it brought me to my life. It forced me into presence. It forced me to have grace for myself in moments where I never thought I would. It pulled me from my distractions. It's as if it put a giant magnifying glass on top of my life and showed me how to move into presence. And I was sad because the pressure of the anxiety that used to be, and it used to be at my back, was no longer there. And you know what? I was sad because sometimes that pressure, that anxiety, it forced me to show up. And so there was a sadness there. And I realized that that was okay. And that was about finding grace. So oftentimes these very, very hard teachers, these things that we wish away, like anxiety and fear, they are our teachers. Things we feel that are killing us, that are stressing us out, these are the things that we miss the most once they leave. Because if we are using them in a spiritual way, in a soulful way, if we are using them to grow, they become these incredibly wonderful teachers. And they really help peel back and blow out these incredible walls that have been there for so long, and the boundaries that we have created around ourselves. So I hope that provides a little clarity and hope for you if you are endeavoring to find a place like that right now, or if it ever comes to your door, knocks on your door. I hope that you remember that. I hope that you remember to give yourself grace as you go through this one. This one may take a while, and remember that that's okay. Remember to smile. So our takeaway from today's meditation is that fear and anxiety are visitors that knock the ground from underneath us, yet they come to assert themselves the way the soul asserts itself, so that we come to speak with our heart. And when we speak with our heart, that's where we find the grace. So your practice, your fear, your anxiety, so if they're coming to the surface and they're starting to overwhelm you, lay on your back in total submission and speak to grace that surrounds you, to find what works for you, to speak to the skies, to journal. You have a life to live. And sometimes fear and anxiety come up so quickly. Sometimes we don't have time to lay down on the ground and speak to the skies or write in our journal at the moment. This practice is meant for you to at least breathe, and in that breath, find grace. You can source the grace in the room around you very quickly. You can walk. You can offer it up at any moment in an instant. I acknowledge you for your bravery and courage today, for going through this practice, through fear and anxiety. And as those things come up for you, find ways that are quick to discard them. Acknowledge and discard, and find grace. Whether that be a quick breath, whether it be a quick walk, whether it be to jump up and down and pronounce the word grace. It doesn't have to be something grandeur. It just needs to speak to you in that moment of fear and anxiety, because it has nothing on you. There's a lot involved in doing this type of work. I acknowledge you for listening to the whispers of today and perhaps talking back to them. And I look forward to seeing what you come up with as you embark on this journey and continue to find grace for yourself, one day at a time, in ways that work for you. Namaste, my friend.